joined by my colleague Hafiz Marzuki.
Yes, Ibrahim, thank you so much. And as you know, actually next week is basically the start of the second half of the year. And in fact, I remember back in 2020, we are hoping that 2021 is a better year. But tell me about your first half of the year.
My first half of the year, Hafiz, is a very stark reminder that it's going to be the same as my second half of the year. In fact, it might very well be the same for 2022 as well. And the story of us prolonged. No, I hope not. But this is the reality that we're operating under, right, Hafiz? And I think the reality is this, that the MCO is not going away. In fact, that will be our first story very shortly. But generally speaking, everybody is still in trouble. ICU beds are still not enough. We have doctors saying things like they want to conduct a hartal or some sort of a protest, perhaps even on 1st of July, to express their basically dissatisfaction at how they are being treated by the Ministry of Health. This is, of course, the contractual doctors. So as you can see, there's a war going on, and the folks that are managing the war, the frontliners themselves, are not at ease with their own contractual situation and employment. And at the end of the day, we have to rely on them to fight this pandemic. So it's not going to be good for them. It's not going to be good for us. Now it's not a good time for us to get sick. Now it's not a good time to end up in a hospital. But the story is, when is a good time? I don't think it's going to be a good time anytime 6 months from now. So yes, my first half is very much going to be the same as my second half. I have set that expectations that low, Hafiz.
Yeah, I mean, that should be the case, right? I'm also expecting the same, but I didn't expect for us to spend the whole year in pretty much in lockdown, or rather in a movement control order of sorts. But I mean, that's the reality. Maybe we should discuss what is up with the week ahead.
Of course. So let's move on to the first story on the week ahead. Next week, we know that the Prime Minister is going to announce some sort of measure. But for now, the Prime Minister says that the first phase of the MCO, of the National Recovery Plan, will be the same until and unless all three indicators have been met. He says that the indicators are daily cases, the national health system's level, as well as the vaccination rate. Here he is explaining the matter.
Saya nak jelaskan kepada yang agak tidak berapa faham bahawa mereka kata sekarang ini dah nak tamat PKP dan sebagainya. Tapi saya kata mulai sekarang ini kita tak sebut PKP ke tak PKP, kita sebut kita berada di fasa. Sekarang ni ialah fasa pertama. Dan fasa pertama ni lah sampai Julai, mungkin pertengahan dan sebagainya itu. Jadi bukan kita kira itu 28, ada silap.
Okay, so the government will announce either tomorrow or Tuesday, either Monday or Tuesday, a more comprehensive form of assistance for various groups in the country who are affected by the phase 1 of the MCO under the National Recovery Plan. He says that the details would be of the assistance, particularly for the SMEs. He also says that the government is working to ensure that 12 million people or households in the country who are affected are given appropriate assistance and support to cope with the impact of the pandemic. But I have to differentiate between the assistance that is given versus the ability for us to help ourselves, i.e. the SINA program. If I can withdraw 10,000 ringgit from my EPF, that does not constitute to governments assisting me. That is me assisting me. So I hope that there would be a clear demarcation into what it means by the government assisting the SMEs, assisting the workers. Early on last week in my show, Notepad with my name on it, we were talking about this on with a professor of economics from the Malaysian University of Science and Technology, Professor Jeffrey Williams. He was clearly indicating that there shouldn't be any more of this assistance package or of sorts any longer. It has to be direct money straight into the people, and that is the only way for the government to help. But that's his argument. There is a counter argument that says you can't really do that. The efficacy is not real. The ability for us to execute that kind of work is not appropriate. How do you disburse 500 ringgit, 1,000 ringgit to the mass? So it's more of the notion of how to make it work rather than the idea of it being a noble idea. So what do you think, Hafiz? Do you think that the government should help people or not help people?
I mean, at the end of the day, Ibrahim, if we look at, I mean, if we just look around us, people are in need of help, and I'm very sure any kind of help is very much welcome. But I think the way we should approach it, as far as the government is concerned, actually, there needs to be a more sustainable way of helping these people, because it appears to me that it's you announce a phase or a new session or a new exercise of MCO, and you then announce the stimulus packages or the assistance, etc., etc. And it seems that we're kind of a cycle here, right? It's more of the same this past, the first half of the year at least. That's how it looks like, and it appears that it's going to be the same for the second half of the year. And I don't think we can continue on this track of announcing MCOs and then announcing assistances time and time again. There needs to be a more comprehensive solution. And we've heard, I'm going to veer off topic a bit from economy and go into health, where we are talking about the COVID-19 being endemic. So we have to start living with COVID-19, and we have to start thinking of policies that fits this mindset of sorts. Ibrahim.
Yeah, and among the things that needs to be discussed is how do we get ahead of this, right? And I'm sure if you Google the National Recovery Plan, there are clear indicators of what it means to go from one phase to another. I don't know why we're not using the traffic light coded system, the way Mel has been arguing for the longest of time, and a lot more people have been arguing the same thing. But generally speaking, at least now we have some sort of indicators. In this sense, cases must go below 4,000.
At least there's no more alphabet soups, right? At least there's no more alphabet soups, right?
Yeah. So we got out of that trouble for now. Now, there's always an opportunity for them to make a comeback. But for now, the three indicators are: cases have to go below 4,000 cases. Vaccination rate has to be above 10%, those kind of stuff. So if we have met all three, then we move from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3 and so on. So just like what we heard from the Prime Minister, it's no longer date, right? So it's no longer June 28th. We have to listen to the new one. It's no longer like that. We have to go with the National Recovery Plan. So is the exit strategy that is presented by the government. But Hafiz, you touched on a very interesting story, which is we now have to live with what we have right now, COVID. And if it does move into an endemic phase, it means it's going to be here forever, or at least for a very long time. Which brings about the second story, the resumption of the Parliament sitting. It is expected that next week, in the week ahead, the Parliament will be resumed at the end of August, but in the week ahead, we might get an exact date. And how we know it's the end of August, it's still being debated right now. But for now, both the speakers of the upper house and the lower house, Tan Sri Rais Yatim and Ad Harun, Dato' Azhar Harun of the Speaker of the Dewan Rakyat, have made the statement jointly and have said so. That will be at the end of August. Here we have the Minister of Law, Dato' Sri Taqiyuddin Hassan, confirming just as much.
Mungkin akhir bulan Ogos ataupun awal bulan September. Saya ikut yang dia punya lah. Parlimen hybrid ini adalah satu option. Kalau sekiranya parlimen tidak boleh dibuat secara fizikal, maka optionnya adalah hybrid. Maksud hybrid ini adalah sebahagiannya hadir secara fizikal, mungkin dalam jumlah yang tertentu. Yang lain tu hadir secara maya. Secara maya ni online lah. Jadi sekarang ni pun banyak mesyuarat, termasuk mesyuarat kabinet sendiri pun dibuat online. Jadi pihak parlimen mencadangkan kepada kerajaan, hybrid tu bukan kerajaan tu. Parlimen mencadangkan kalau tidak boleh dibuat secara fizikal dan kalau kerajaan putuskan untuk adakan sidang parlimen, pilihannya hybrid. Jadi untuk hybrid tu dua-dua speaker pun dah beritahu dah ada banyak perkara yang perlu diselesaikan.
So, have you been in a Zoom meeting or a Microsoft Teams meeting with more than 20 people? You would find that the situation is not endearing at all. In fact, you would have a lot of people arguing about the same things, and they might not even realize that they are agreeing on most items. That is what happens with a meeting of 20 people. Imagine a meeting with 222 people. But it's okay, having a hybrid parliament. Yeah, I mean, having a hybrid parliament is a lot better than having no parliament. However, I'm still of the opinion that the parliament should be convened in physical. All the MPs have been vaccinated. I'm sure the staff has been vaccinated. I'm sure there is an ability for them to adhere to SOPs. If we can turn up at our offices, they too can turn up to do the business of the people. And I think it's important for us to realize that it's been far too long. The parliament has been suspended. For what reason, we don't know. In fact, the cases are still at 5,000 daily cases per day. So it's not really working, this whole strategy of them suspending parliament. So yeah, it's about time.
Yes, and I totally agree with you, Ibrahim. Yeah, it is about time. And but I see it as a positive development on the government side. At least they are starting to talk about it. I mean, there's intention there definitely. To actually resume or reconvene the parliament within 2-3 months' time, and of course they have to do it because it's budget time is coming soon, right? And you have to table it in parliament. I don't think you can table it from a Microsoft Teams or a Zoom way. So I think it's about time, and I'm looking forward to actually how they're going to maneuver themselves out of this, Ibrahim.
So keep a watch out on the date of the parliament sitting resuming. Remember that some state assemblies have already announced the opening of their state assemblies, so it's just a matter of time when the parliament sitting will be resumed. And why is that important? That is important because it also means that the resumption of democracy is going to be continued in this country. That's coming up in the week ahead. So we'll go for a short break. When we come back, we'll talk more about what's happening with our country in the days to come. We'll be right back after these messages.
Jayden Sanchez.
Yang terjadi adalah berita, tetapi tiada siapa yang boleh bawakan yang terkini dan tergempar seperti kami.
Dilihat hanya memberi wang tanpa matlamat yang tepat.
Dia tidak melakukan apa-apa kesalahan.
Untuk mendapatkan jawapan yang bermakna, kita perlu soalan yang tepat.
Amat sedih dengan apa yang berlaku ke atas.
Tiada ruang untuk berita palsu.
Negara kita telah merekodkan kes harian baru sebanyak
hanya fakta yang diberikan.
Amat penting untuk meneruskan perjuangan.
This is the week ahead. My name is Ibrahim Sani. I'm joined by my I'm joined by my colleague Hafiz Marzuki. Pardon me. So our next story is about the vaccination rate. The total dosages given for the COVID-19 vaccine have reached over 7.5 million as of today, as of Sunday. The Health Minister Adam Baber says that those who have received at least the first dose number over 5.5 million people. Meanwhile, over 2 million people have received the complete 2 doses. However, the past 24 hours have shown that the daily vaccination rate is still below 2,000 people per day. The Special Committee to carry out the vaccination program, JKJAV, shows that Saturday's daily rate was about 187,000 doses daily. So, Hafiz, this is the whole problem of the targeting of 250,000 daily cases by end of June or 350,000 dosages by end of June. We're not there. It's very difficult to get to that number. So it's 3 more days to June. Are you telling me that we can go up there? But I'm not discounting the great work that JKJAV has done and the frontliners have done in dosaging or vaccinating or inoculating the people. That's important, but it's not that easy to get to 350,000 people per day.
Exactly, Ibrahim, and I agree with you. We have to commend the JKJAV, and of course, you do see a slight pickup. That means they are accelerating the vaccination rate. However, yes, I do want to point out. I want to talk about the first dosage of people, and usually when you talk about targeting 250,000 or 300,000 doses, it actually depends on who's taking the first dose, because it has to be high, right? Because once you get in the line for the first dose, 3 weeks or 3 months ahead, you will definitely get the second dose, because that's how we have structured our vaccination program. So I think the key thing here is actually to increase the number of the first dose recipients to a certain number so that we can reach the amount. And in fact, I've done a bit of, I would say, basic or rudimentary calculations myself on the daily vaccination rate. And if we were to go on the premise that we can get about 150,000 first recipient dose every day, we're actually going to run out of people to be vaccinated for their first dose by mid-September, actually, Ibrahim. And actually, so it does present to me like, wow, in terms of the number of people who are actually registered for the vaccination, which is numbered around more than 16 million, we are actually only left with about 10 to 11 million. We're actually 1/3 of the way there. But COVID-19 hasn't shown any signs of abating. So what then? That question pops up in my mind. Pardon me for taking this discussion a bit too long, but I think that's something that is ongoing, and it kind of worries me, because what then? Of course, we are talking about the week ahead, but we need to look, what are we going to do in September once the first dosage is finished?
Yeah, exactly. And that is the biggest problem when it comes to the vaccination rate. But we also have to jump to the fourth story right now, which is what will happen in the weeks to come when it comes to the moratorium. Because in relation to our first discussion just now, Hafiz, we were talking about the possibility of the government reintroducing some of the methods of helping out people, helping out the businesses. But one item that pops into mind is the Federation of the Malaysian Manufacturers, because the FMM is questioning the rationale behind the key indicators set by the government to determine whether or not Malaysia will graduate to the next phase of the NRP, or the National Recovery Plan. Tan Sri Sotian Lai of FMM says that the threshold of fewer than 4,000 daily cases is supported by science and is data-based. But there are concerns that even after a 4-week lockdown, the number of cases remain high, which indicates, according to him, that a full lockdown may not be the best solution. It's very rare, Hafiz. I agree with FMM. Very rare, because I'm more of the pro-worker, of a socialist thing going on. I don't want the tycoons to be driving the business world. But in this sense, it's hard to disagree. I understand.
Yeah, it's a pragmatic statement, right, made by him. I think it's a very pragmatic statement made by him.
It is a pragmatic statement. But, a friend of mine is a doctor at MAIPS, and he is treating the ICU patients as well. And he is saying that the reality on the ground is that there's not enough beds. There's literally not enough ICU beds, not just in MAIPS, but in many other hospitals across the country. When this is the case, we really have to think long and hard about how we're managing the situation in the front line. Are we really assured that the lockdown can actually push down the utility of the ICU beds? I don't think so. It's not working. But does it also mean that if you don't have a full lockdown, or you have the lockdown lifted, or the MCO lifted, does this also mean that you're risking a lot of Malaysians' health and well-being, and on that matter, also the mental health and the physical health of our frontliners? It's a very, very difficult situation to talk about. That's why, Hafiz, it's not down to you and me on a talk show on Astro AWANI. It has to be debated at the parliament. The check and balance has to be there because it's no longer able to, we can't rely just on the executive to make these calls to work for us. It's no longer working. We really need to pool in the resources, however messy it is, but we really need to get 222 voices debating it out.
I totally agree with you on that front, Ibrahim, because just the two of us are talking. We just two individuals, right? Just sounding off opinions and observations based on. We really need a comprehensive mechanism or system to actually check each of these solutions and work out what's the best for Malaysia at this particular point in time. And to tell you the truth, nobody really knows exactly what's the best for Malaysia. At this particular point in time, you need to check and balance. If you suggest a policy, that policy should be debated, it should be scrutinized, and I don't see a better place to do that than the parliament.
Fantastic. Okay, one more short break before we talk about other fun matters like football. We'll be right back after these messages.
Khazanah Nasional berhad
lebih sukar untuk COVID menjangkit kita.
Untuk tempoh 2 minggu ni duduk di rumah. Kalau kita boleh laksanakan PKP Kendiri dan keluarga,
saya kira insya-Allah kita boleh berjaya. Akhirnya kita menang.
Perang COVID-19 masih belum berakhir. Dalam kita berusaha memutuskan rantaian wabak ini, kita jangan terpedaya dengan virus maklumat palsu. Simak fakta melalui www.astroawani.com atau aplikasi Astro Awani. Teruskan berdisiplin, ratakan lengkungan pandemik ini.
The third wave of COVID-19 has taken us by storm. There's no room to take anything lightly. Everyone must follow all the steps to stop the spread of COVID-19. Social distancing, face mask, follow these steps, this SOP with the utmost discipline. Together, we can flatten the curve.
Kini berwajah baru.
Ini pula susulan khas pesawat Back Air di Kazakhstan. Pesawat berkenaan dilaporkan tergelincir 2 kali.
Notifikasi berita terkini dan navigasi mudah. Podcast dikemas kini dengan berita dan program.
Rebirth, Reformasi, Resistance and Hope.
Serta video tanpa had dengan scroll tanpa henti. Buat turun aplikasi baru Astro Awani sekarang.
Semua yang terjadi adalah berita, tetapi tiada siapa yang boleh bawakan yang terkini dan tergempar seperti kami.
Dilihat hanya memberi wang tanpa matlamat yang tepat.
Dia tidak melakukan apa-apa kesalahan.
Untuk mendapatkan jawapan yang bermakna, kita perlu soalan yang tepat.
Amat sedih dengan apa yang berlaku kat atas.
Tiada ruang untuk berita palsu.
Negara kita telah merekodkan kes harian.
This is the week ahead. My name is Ibrahim Sani. I have Hafiz Marzuki joining us this evening. Let's talk football.
Yes, definitely, Ibrahim. We know we're actually entering the second round of Euro 2020. So let's get on to it.
Okay, last week we spoke about how upset I was looking at the normalcy of things that are currently happening in Europe when it comes to COVID-19 with the people intermingling, thousands, tens of thousands, in fact, hundreds and tens of thousands of people intermingling. While that may be a scary thought for us folks here in Malaysia, but the normalcy idea is returning in Europe. While at the same time, we've heard a lot of news about how the Delta variant is also impacting us and as well as other areas. It's also worth noting that life must go on. And in this sense, yes, life is indeed going on. In the week ahead, we're going to be talking about one of the biggest sporting events in the world, back to back, yeah? Because after Euro, we have the Olympic happening in Tokyo, but we haven't heard so much news or press coverage on that because not because of the fact, suppressing those kind of news, but because really there isn't much really happening about Tokyo Olympics. And of course, while that is still ongoing, the impact of the Euro 2020 to the European economy in this week is going to be massive. We're talking about over 20 European countries being involved. travelers from, say, for instance, Germany, in Italy, and France, and Spain, of course, England. They are all going to all the other countries, and they're all spending in all the other countries. Of course, SOP restrictions are very tight, but at the same time, within those SOPs, they are working within those guidelines. They are still rejuvenating the economy of the European peoples. And of course, that is the key highlight of the Euro 2020. It's not just about the football, it's about the lives and impacts and the economy that it brings with this particular sport.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Ibrahim. And some more when we are talking about the 60th edition of the Euro 2020 this time around. They are actually hosting in different stadiums in different countries, and I'm actually surprised they are doing it that way at this particular point in time. I do understand the celebratory aspect of football tournaments, but you know the way they do it, we do have to tip our hats off to them, because it's been going on well so far. There's, of course, you hear cases of some of the players being tested for positive, but no major clusters have emerged from these particular events, and maybe there is something to be learned from how they have conducted this tournament so far, and maybe we can replicate it for Malaysia, Ibrahim.
You know, the macabre in me expects the world to look at Euro 2020 as more of a test case scenario, as a scenario where are we really there when it comes to the normalcy of the people? And if things go bad, do we contain it within a particular geographical area, i.e. in this sense, it is just contained to be in Europe. But without thinking too maliciously about the whole situation, I do believe that this is a good test case scenario. If Southeast Asia, for instance, has inoculated 80% of our population, Indonesia, Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, you name it. And if we look at India and China, the two most populous countries in the world, and over 3 billion people have been inoculated, can the three of us, these three big regions, India, China, and Southeast Asia, which in totality control more than half the world's economy, can we resume back normalcy? I believe we can. I don't believe we can do it by the end of the year. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's a fair assessment. There's a fair, observation to make. Of course, we are far off. I think in terms of percentage, we're not even halfway there. But yeah, I think we should make steps of heading towards there, and it starts today or tomorrow or next week, actually, Ibrahim.
Next week, perfect. Okay, so that's the whole time we have for you for this week. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Let us know all your comments. Use the hashtag AWANI News. Until then, thanks very much for watching. My name is Ibrahim Sani.
And I'm Hafiz Mazuki signing off for this edition of The Week Ahead.